Okay, so today I'm going to make a worksheet for how to measure and mark up the different kinds of meter. Alright, so first off we'll start by labeling the paper, and the first thing that you need to do is understand how to measure syllables in a word. And I'll start over here with that since it's not really part of meter, but it's the first step. So the best thing to do is take a word such as the word besides, and or you could just say beside, and what you do, you over exaggerate the pronunciation of it. That's the best way to understand the syllables, like beside, beside. So that helps you to understand where it divides, and to mark a divide in syllables it's usually marked with a slash like that, so it's beside. So, and you over exaggerate it to see where the stress is placed, but we'll talk about stress in a few minutes. The main thing is understanding how to mark syllables. And after you understand how to mark a syllable, then you need to know how to recognize the stressed and unstressed syllables. We'll take the word beside and we'll take the word began to understand how to mark syllables. So beside, began. Okay, so an unstressed syllable is marked with a U. It looks like a U shape, and a stressed syllable is marked with a line up above it. So beside, pronounce it beside, and then you'll understand that there's an unstressed on the B and a stressed on side because it's beside. You can hear the stress on the side part instead of the B side. Began, it's the same way. Unstressed followed by stress. And that begins understanding meter, or understanding syllables, stressed and unstressed syllables. Now what we'll do is we'll take one line. I'll start over here. We'll take one line of poetry. Beside the rusted ford, beside the rusted ford, sipping soda. This is a line that I wrote myself. Okay, so beside the rusted ford, sipping soda. Okay, and then you'll begin to mark the stressed and unstressed. Beside the rusted ford, sipping soda. Okay, so that's one line of poetry right there that is marked for syllables, unstressed and stressed syllables. Now you'll start to notice a pattern between the unstressed and stressed syllables in most formal poetry. So if you notice a pattern, what they normally do to mark a pattern, which is called metrical feet. I'll give a short definition of what a metrical foot is over here on our worksheet. A metrical foot is a basic unit of measurement in poetry. And then we'll give the example of beside, marked off stress, unstressed, stressed. And the way that you mark off a metrical foot is in parentheses, like that. So going back over here, we mark them off in parentheses, and you'll see a pattern. Always begin at the start of the line. Some people begin at the end, but then it's hard to pick up on a metrical pattern that way. You might get it off. And there you can mark off the number of metrical feet. It doesn't matter how many stressed and unstressed syllables there are. There will always be more than one, and there are never more than 3 in formal poetry. And this is a metrical foot here because it's marked off, and it's a regular pattern in this line. And meter is the second thing that you need to know. Meter is the number of metrical feet in a line of poetry. So we count the number of metrical feet in this line of poetry. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's 5 metrical feet. There's a name for 5 metrical feet in a line of poetry, and that's called pentameter, which is one of the most common meters. Pentameter means that there are 5 metrical feet and there are 10 individual syllables in a line of pentameter poetry. Okay, so now I'm going to write down the most common metrical feet. The most common metrical feet is the iamb, which is what this is. An unstressed followed by a stressed is an iamb. Unstressed, stressed. Then there is the trochee, which is the opposite of the iamb, a stressed syllable followed by an unstressed syllable. Then there is a spondee, which is 2 stressed syllables in a row. A pyrrhic, which is 2 unstressed syllables in a row. Anapest, which is 2 unstressed and 1 stressed syllable. You'll notice that this is a 3-syllable metrical foot here. A dactyl, which is a stressed followed by 2 unstressed syllables. A amphimeter, which is one of the less common metrical feet in poetry, which is a stressed followed by an unstressed followed by a stressed. And then a amphibrachus, which is very uncommon but still used. Amphibrachus, which is a stressed unstressed followed by a stressed followed by an unstressed. And that's the basic metrical feet. And then the basic meter, the basic labels for meter, which is one metrical foot per line is considered monometer. 2 metrical feet per line is diameter. 3 metrical feet per line is trimeter, which you may have already heard some of these before. 4 metrical feet per line is tetrameter. 5 metrical feet per line is pentameter, which is very common with Shakespearean sonnets. And 6 is hexameter, whichever way you want to pronounce it. 7 is septimeter, and that's as far as you go in naming the number of metrical feet per line of poetry, the meter. So if you hear someone say iambic pentameter, that means that there is each metrical foot is made up of an iamb, and there are 5 metrical feet per line. This line here is an iambic pentameter. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 metrical feet, and each metrical foot is made up of an iamb. And I'll give an example now of anapestic trimeter. And he spoke in the language of life. Spoke in the language of life. So first you mark off your syllables. And he spoke in the language of life. So, and he spoke in the language of life. So you'll see how it's divided up. There are 2 unstressed followed by stressed, 2 unstressed followed by stressed, 2 unstressed followed by stressed. This divides it up, so you will recognize this from the list before as an anapest, so you call it anapestic trimeter, because there are 3 metrical feet per line, and each metrical foot is made up of an anapest. Trimeter. And that's an example of that. And that's the basic way of understanding how to read, measure, and label the meter in formal poetry.